In a move that is sending shockwaves across the nation and internationally, former U.S. President Donald Trump has unveiled a highly controversial plan to repurpose the infamous Guantanamo Bay Detention Center. The new vision for the military base, which is known for its controversial use in the War on Terror, would see it transformed into a holding facility for what Trump refers to as criminal aliens, illegal immigrants who have committed serious crimes in the United States. This proposal, which has set off heated debates on both sides of the political spectrum, raises serious questions about the intersection of national security, human rights, and the treatment of non-citizens. Guantanamo Bay, a military prison located on the southeastern tip of Cuba, became synonymous with the War on Terror, having been established in 2002 as a detention center for suspected terrorists. The facility's history is mired in allegations of torture, indefinite detention, and violations of international human rights law. With several presidents having called for the closure of the prison due to its negative impact on the United States' image abroad, Trump's new proposal would mark a dramatic shift in its role. The former president has argued that the United States is facing a growing problem with illegal immigration, particularly with regard to individuals who enter the country unlawfully and subsequently engage in criminal activity. According to Trump, these individuals should not only face legal consequences for their crimes, but should also be detained in a secure facility that can handle the severity of their offenses. In his words, Guantanamo Bay is the perfect place to hold those who come into this country, break the law, and cause harm to our citizens. We need to take a tougher stance. The proposal, a tougher approach to illegal immigration. The proposal calls for the construction of additional detention facilities at Guantanamo Bay, capable of housing individuals who are illegally in the United States and have been convicted of serious crimes such as violent assaults, drug trafficking, or even murder. Trump's supporters argue that this approach would send a clear message. Individuals who break the law in the U.S. should face serious consequences, regardless of their immigration status. Furthermore, they believe that this will deter would-be criminals from entering the U.S. in the first place. The plan calls for a significant expansion of the Guantanamo Bay Detention Center, which would house thousands of individuals accused of committing violent crimes after entering the U.S. unlawfully. These detainees would be held until they could face trial or deportation proceedings, with a particular focus on those who have already been convicted of crimes in U.S. courts. Trump suggests that this would not only alleviate overcrowding in domestic prisons, but would also ensure that criminals are isolated in a secure facility that minimizes the risk of escape or further violence. International reaction and human rights concerns. The reaction to Trump's Guantanamo Bay proposal has been swift and largely negative from human rights organizations, legal experts, and members of the international community. Critics argue that this proposal raises serious ethical and legal questions about the treatment of individuals, many of whom would have their constitutional rights limited, simply because they are not citizens of the United States. International human rights advocates warn that sending people to Guantanamo Bay, which has long been criticized for its treatment of detainees, would be a violation of international law. Specifically, they cite the United Nations Convention Against Torture, which prohibits the use of torture or cruel, inhuman, or degrading treatment or punishment, something Guantanamo Bay has been accused of in the past. Many also point to the fact that the U.S. has already faced significant international backlash for holding detainees without trial for indefinite periods at the facility. The reopening of Guantanamo Bay would send a message that the United States is willing to engage in the same type of detention practices that have been widely condemned by the global community, said Amnesty International's U.S. Director, Margaret Huang. It would create an atmosphere where basic human rights protections are ignored for people who are not U.S. citizens, and that cannot be allowed to happen. Additionally, many critics are concerned that such a plan could lead to a more militarized approach to immigration enforcement. They fear that the U.S. government could expand its use of detention in ways that disproportionately affect marginalized communities, particularly those from Latin American and Muslim-majority countries, further fueling racial and ethnic tensions within the country. Political and legal repercussions. Domestically, the proposal is dividing the political landscape. Supporters of Trump argue that this is a necessary move to restore law and order and send a strong message to those attempting to exploit the U.S. immigration system. They suggest that criminal aliens who are caught and convicted of violent crimes should not be given the same protections as U.S. citizens, and that Guantanamo Bay could be an effective and secure place to detain them without risking overcrowding in domestic prisons. On the other hand, opponents of the proposal, including many Democrats and civil liberties organizations, are quick to point out the risks of expanding the use of Guantanamo Bay as a detention center. They argue that it would further erode the country's commitment to human rights and due process, and that the U.S. should focus on reforming its immigration policies to address the root causes of illegal immigration, rather than punishing those who have already entered the country. Trump's proposal is not just a matter of national security, it's about justice and fairness. The U.S. is built on the principles of equal protection under the law, and we cannot afford to abandon those principles just to make a political statement, said Democratic Senator Elizabeth Warren. Moreover, legal experts argue that using Guantanamo Bay to house criminal aliens may face significant legal challenges. The U.S. Constitution guarantees certain rights to all individuals within U.S. jurisdiction, regardless of their immigration status. If the government were to detain non-citizens in a facility that is not subject to the same legal standards as U.S. prisons, it could face significant legal challenges that could stretch for years, potentially leading to court rulings that could block the plan. The broader implications. If implemented, the proposal to repurpose Guantanamo Bay could have profound implications for U.S. immigration policy and the treatment of non-citizens. It could mark a shift toward a more punitive, security-focused approach to immigration, prioritizing the incarceration of individuals who are perceived as threats to national security. This could set the stage for more widespread use of military facilities to house immigrants and individuals who are not U.S. citizens, with long-term implications for the country's stance on human rights and due process. Furthermore, the decision to house criminal aliens at Guantanamo Bay could lead to further polarization within the U.S., with immigrant rights groups and civil liberties organizations likely to challenge the policy at every step. The international community's response will be closely monitored, and the United States may face further diplomatic repercussions for reviving a facility that has long been a symbol of human rights abuses. As of now, Trump's Guantanamo Bay proposal remains just that, a bold and divisive idea that seems to capture the former president's tough-on-immigration rhetoric. Whether it will ever be implemented, or whether it will remain a talking point in the ongoing debate over U.S. immigration policy, is yet to be seen. However, one thing is certain. It has reignited discussions about the limits of U.S. authority, the rights of non-citizens, and the role of detention facilities like Guantanamo Bay in shaping the future of American immigration policy. The eyes of the world are watching as this debate unfolds, and the outcome could have lasting effects on both U.S. domestic politics and international relations.